Hey, what's up guys, my name is Charlie. Today we're going to be doing some more requested reaction videos, and this video is requested by Joe's Sonic Boom, and it's going to be Johnny versus the PlayStation. Oh boy, the PlayStation Classic as I like to call it. The PlayStation Classic was real amazing at the time. I remember playing a shitload of PlayStation games like Resident Evil 1 and 2 and 3. Those were perhaps one of my favorite PlayStation games of all time because I absolutely adored the Resident Evil franchise on the PlayStation at the time. I still do, don't get me wrong. But I'm just giving you an example. Yeah. I remember playing the PlayStation Classic, even when the PlayStation 2 came out. And even when the PlayStation 3 came out, I was still playing the PlayStation Classic. It's kind of sad, actually. But I really did enjoy the PlayStation. Yeah, let's check out the video, shall we? Let's go. Oh boy, that good old-fashioned PlayStation startup music takes me back. I remember that tweet, and the game would never fucking load.
In the early 1990s, my video game experiences were among the likes of the NES, the Sega Genesis, and the Super Nintendo. However, on one fateful day in 1996, my father decided to get the family the newly released PlayStation, at the expense of trading in most of my Super Nintendo games, without telling me.
Wow, that's brutal.
I
That's
guess times
heartbreaking.
were tough. I wasn't exactly sure. There was nothing my 9-year-old self can do about it anyway, and that was over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I didn't stay angry for very long.
And why is that? Because the PlayStation will go on to be the console to introduce me to so many genres of games that would later cause me to become the video gamer I am today. It was the console where I experimented with a whole bunch of games.
Oh
either
yeah,
through
I played
birthday
a lot
gifts,
of games
demos from
on
the underground
PlayStation.
samplers, games purchased with allowance money, or renting from stores like Blockbuster and Hollywood Video.
Now, the point of this video is to simply take a look back at all the games I used to play on this system before the likes of the PS2 entered the scene. So, to be more accurate, between the years of 1996 and 2000. Also, don't be surprised if I don't happen to mention a title or franchise that you grew up with. I played a lot of games on this system.
Yeah,
but
so
I didn't
did
play
I.
everything.
No, did I. I
Well,
played
back when the
about
console was still
50
relevant.
games or so.
I guess I should give a brief history lesson
Probably
over the
60
console itself.
PlayStation
Back when the
games.
likes of the Super Nintendo was flourishing in the business, Nintendo struck a deal with Sony to produce a CD-based add-on that would breathe new life into the already popular SNES. Now that sounds familiar. Shortened to the point, the two companies ended up falling out in the whole thing, and the CD add-on would later transform into what we know as the PlayStation 1.
Boy, did that end up biting them in the ass. But could you imagine what the video game scene would be like today if Nintendo and Sony didn't split up and make video games together? Well, since Nintendo and Sony couldn't make amends, Nintendo ended up striking up a deal with Philips. And where did that lead them to?
Great! I'll grab my stuff!
There's your answer.
Yeah, Jesus.
Games for the PS1
So the
weren't
CDI
cartridges or
games.
anything like that, they were CD-ROMs, which allowed developers to create higher quality games thanks to the greater amount of space the medium contained. What you're not seeing here are the original cases that
Twisted
PS1 games
Metal
were stored in
played
when the
that's
system launched in
amazing.
1995. They were about the same size as American Sega Saturn cases, which were just a damn nightmare to store on a shelf. As the years passed on, my collection of PS1 games would fluctuate wildly either because of negligence or just being new to the whole CD concept.
CD3D.
It was the PlayStation that taught me that video games should be cared for, specifically CD-ROMs, because these babies were nowhere near as durable as these sons of bitches. Just looking at this thing gives me flashbacks to when I first laid eyes on it. The logo that immediately catches your eye, the lens that you were forbidden to touch. Whatever
Yeah,
the hell these two
no
boys
chocolate
did.
or peanut
Look at
butter
this,
allowed
it's
on that
so
lens. I got
naked.
shit for doing
No
that.
DualShock analog sticks, no home button to go back to the menu, and the classic gray color that signified the second coming of video games to me, and that oh so nostalgic boot up screen.
Yep, that
No
never
shit.
loaded your games.
Since games were on CDs, and because this is the time before
I had
consoles
that
had
problem
built-in
all the
hard
time
drives,
where I
you
didn't
needed
load the
memory
game
cards to
'cause
save
the disc
game
was
data.
scratched.
We didn't immediately have one when we first got the PlayStation, so you can imagine the pain I felt with certain games because I wasn't able to save to progress further at a later time.
Oh, that
These things didn't
sucks.
hold much memory either, and because I couldn't
No.
afford a second memory card until much
Yeah.
later, I had to delete old files to make room for newer ones.
I know that
Also, this
feeling.
thing is
That was a
loud,
bitch.
especially when the disc has a few scratches on it. If you didn't take care of your games, this bastard had no problem letting you know how much you fucked up.
Yeah.
So where do I begin in terms of what I played? Hey, you know what? Let's start
All
with
my
the racing
games are
genre.
scratched as fuck.
Yo! Here's what's happening! The awesome tunes are waiting for you!
Motor Tune Grand Prix, which was actually the second game in the
Never
series, seeing
played
as
this
the
one.
original never left Japan. It was this game that helped me grow interest in the kart racing genre, using items to disrupt your opponent and doing whatever you could to ensure first place victory. Not bad for what was
I think
considered
I
a
played like
prototype
The
of the Gran
Simpsons
Turismo
wrestling
series.
and Intelligence
Yeah, I'm not
Cube.
kidding. Look it up. The only way you could play multiplayer, however, was via the link cable system. That means you needed 2 PlayStations, 2 copies of the game, and 2 TVs. I'm
Damn.
assuming this was done to emulate the feeling of arcade-styled racing games.
Like Duke
but
Nukem
what
Land
in
of the
God's
Babes
name
or
was wrong
something
with
like that
split screen?
for the PlayStation.
But when I wasn't in the mood for something
Tons
colorful
of
and silly,
games I
I was
played.
going fast thanks to the likes of Ridge Racer and Ridge Racer Revolution. There wasn't really anything fancy about these games, just pure adrenaline-filled racing action with a bunch of drifting. I liked Revolution more than the first game, and you want to know why? The inclusion of a rear-view mirror, I shit you not. It was so satisfying to block oncoming cars from passing me, especially that fucking black car that was so disgustingly fast. Yeah, you stay there, you motherfucker! Get your ass back here! Ugh! I also like playing the Galaga games that you can play when the game was loading up. Well, speaking of that, it was thanks to the Namco Museum series in the PS1 that I was able to experience popular arcade games in the 80s, like Pac-Man or New Rally X, which I enjoyed
Yes,
for the
I
theme song
remember
alone.
those.
Games like Baraduke didn't really tickle my fancy, and Bosconian didn't take long to start getting on my nerves with its constant blaring of What the fuck is a LART?
A
It
lot.
was also pretty cool to explore the
Yeah,
3D
this
museum
Pac-Man
and learn a
3D
thing or two about the
museum.
games being
Yes,
showcased.
I had
It
this.
became a goal
I
of mine
spent
and my
hours
family
on
to collect
that.
the entire museum series, and we got as far as owning N, A, M, and O, but never
Damn.
C. Nowadays, all I have left is N and O. But Volume 5 itself might be my favorite of the bunch because it introduced me to the likes of Dragon Spirit, a fun but incredibly
Spirit.
fucking hard top-down shooter, and most importantly, The Legend of Valkyrie.
Legend
I
of
spent so
Valkyrie.
many hours on this son of a bitch, and that soundtrack, man, such a joy to my ears. In this day and age, when you think about a musical game or a rhythm game in general, your mind would probably jump to either Dance Dance Revolution or Rock Band, and truth be told, I probably would as well. But I remember the game that pretty much started that whole craze, Parappa the Rapper. It started this young dog named
Parappa,
Parappa
what
who
the-
relied on singing rap music for pretty much everything. Learning karate, getting a driver's license, baking a cake, and taking a
Baking a
shit.
cake.
I swear the
Taking a
timing on pressing buttons is strict as fuck for some of these songs, and I couldn't stand the likes of Cheap Cheap's cooking show because of it. It pissed me off to no end. And when I get stressed out, sometimes I just want to beat the living shit out of something.
Damn.
And while I played my share of fighting games on the Super Nintendo, it was the PlayStation where I played a whole bunch of them. Namely from Capcom, like the Street Fighter Alpha series and Street Fighter EX, which was the series' debut in 3D. This one hasn't exactly aged that well, and I don't think it flows as well as the Alpha series. There were also non-Street Fighter games I played like Darkstalkers, which was pretty much Street Fighter only with fairy tale creatures. But hey, there was also Marvel Superheroes, which was pretty much Street Fighter with Marvel characters. I guess my
Sounds
fighting
decent.
game experiences weren't really varied. I recall playing Battle Arena Toshinden for
Battle
one weekend and
Arena,
absolutely
yes, I
hating it
played
because
the
of how
shit out of
stiff and
this
clunky
game.
it felt. And while
I
I got a
loved
kick
it.
out of Tekken
Even
2,
though the
I never
controls are
felt the need to
clunky.
own the game and was just satisfied enough renting it. Punching someone in the face didn't cut it at times, though. Sometimes I wanted a bit more mayhem and destruction. And that's where Twisted Metal comes
Twisted
in, baby.
Metal,
Specifically the
yes.
second game in the series.
Fuck
There's not much
me.
to explain here. You pick a vehicle, you drive around these designated arenas and blow shit up with missiles,
Yes.
bombs, special
I
attacks, and
loved
machine
this
guns.
shit.
This is one of the games that we played the most when I was young. And it
Yeah,
was so
same
damn
here.
fun every single time we turned it on. That and Vigilante 8, which was Activision's response to the Twisted Metal series. And surprisingly enough, it was a damn decent game in its own right. It's pretty much the same thing, but there's a lot more carnage to behold
think
thanks to
I played
destructible
this
environments, though the sound design was a bit too loud at points. Overall, a good game though. As I observe the destruction of the Eiffel Tower, I immediately think of another game that I played that personified testosterone-filled action. And if you think I'm talking about Independence Day, you're
Independence
wrong.
Day, no,
I was a
please.
fan of the
I
movie
never
back
had
when I was a
that.
kid, so I really looked forward to this game. It ended up boring the shit out of me, even when I used the cheat code to play as the alien spacecraft. Star Fox, this ain't. Nah, the game I'm talking about is One. Yeah,
One.
that's its name. One. You star as this amnesiac hero named John King with a gun for an arm, and that's all the backstory you're gonna get. The first level starts with a fucking explosion, and you're on your own from there on out. This
Damn.
game is destruction incarnate, and back then, I thought it was so freaking awesome. Today, I still think the game is pretty enjoyable, but the amount of explosions and bloodshed make it a bit hard to see where you're going at times. And I don't remember the first level being this unforgivable with making jumps. One is good old-fashioned arcade fun. It's not the best of its kind, but it's decent enough. If you wanted arcade-style shoot-'em-up action, though, you played In the Hunt. God damn, I can't count the amount of times I died trying to beat this game. But I was mesmerized by the sprite quality. I didn't see anything like it on the Genesis or SNES. It reminds me a lot of Metal Slug looking back at it now.
Metal Slug, yeah.
Oh, it was made by the same people.
Oh, that
Well,
explains it.
it.
Yeah,
When I
that
didn't
does.
want my screen flashing explosives all the damn time,
Metal
I
Gear
got my
Solid.
action from the likes of Metal Gear Solid, which I
Yeah.
managed to attain by trading a Pokemon card, believe it or not. That's
Damn,
just how
that's a good
popular that
deal.
card game was in the 90s, folks.
Yeah, it
I
was
get
very
requests to look
popular.
at this game and the
I
series
gave
in
all my
general all the
Pokemon
time,
cards
and don't get me
away. I
wrong,
had,
guys,
like,
it's something
80
I'm
of
gonna
them.
do in due time.
Or 100 of
But
them.
there's a
I
lot
gave
to
them all
absorb when
away.
you're reviewing a
Oh,
Metal Gear
what a
Solid game.
stupid move.
The first game, however, was one I always enjoyed going back to. It's a great time for me. But while there were times I felt bloodthirsty, I liked relieving some stress on certain other genres. I didn't play many
No.
puzzle games
This
on the
is-
PlayStation.
this is a
not
game I
counting a demo
played.
of Intelligence Cube,
Intelligence
but I
Cube,
love me
yes.
some Tetris Plus, produced by... It's exactly what it sounds like. It's Tetris, but with it being
Tetris.
multiplayer, me and the guys always got a kick out of trying to out-Tetris each other. Tetris is now a verb. On certain occasions, I would also like to play some sports games with my dad, like Triple Play 97,
Yeah,
Knockout
it
Kings,
was
and NBA
alright.
Live 2000.
Remember
We also like to
playing
play a lot
Bubble
of Hot
Buster or
Shots
something
Golf,
like that,
which I
that
unfortunately
Dragon
don't own anymore.
Bubble Pop
Weekends,
game.
however, were usually
You
reserved for the time
shoot
sinks. I'm
balloons,
talking RPGs,
bubbles.
folks. The Super Nintendo filled my appetite with the likes of Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI, but the PlayStation is what got me hooked on Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy IX, some of my favorite RPGs of all time. Thanks to the Anthologies collection, I was even able to experience Final Fantasy V for the first time, and man were we missing out. So if you're going to play Final Fantasy V nowadays, you're better off with the Game Boy Advance port. The Final Fantasy Chronicles finally allowed me to play the likes of Chrono Trigger without incinerating my wallet for an SNES copy, and eventually I ended up getting its sequel Chrono Cross, that I have yet to sit down and actually play.
Oh, come on. My backlog is ginormous enough already. Besides, I'm playing Bravely Default now, damn it. Leave me be.
Since I was following Squaresoft so closely throughout the late 90s, this eventually led me to the likes of one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 1, Brave Fencer Musashi. A heavily
heard of it.
underrated title that I think needs more love, starting with a digital release so that more people can play it. It's on the
it's Resident
PlayStation
Evil
Store in
Nemesis,
Japan,
yes.
so come on, what's the deal? You play as a young boy named Musashi who's been summoned by the all-you-can-eat kingdom to stop the Thirst Quencher Empire. Yes, these types of puns are all over the fucking place, but I couldn't care because this game is fun. You can copy enemy abilities by absorbing them, you can gain experience to get stronger, and you can find upgrades to make Musashi more versatile. It's got everything I'm looking for in an action RPG. It really deserves its own review, so maybe I'll get to that later down the road.
At the end of the day, though, sometimes you just feel like playing something a bit more traditional. My past experiences with Sega and Nintendo led me to an affinity for platformers. And with the PlayStation, we not only had our 2D side-scrolling games, but we also started getting a whole bunch of 3D games.
Yeah.
These are the types of games I rented the most from rental stores.
I remember
when a platformer
South
is done
Park.
right, it can be a very good time for me,
What
and
was
I had
that?
my
South
share of both the
Park
good and the
PlayStation
bad.
game.
I made
With
sure
the
to follow
plunger.
up on series I enjoy playing on the
snow.
SNES, like the Mega Man X franchise, and I think I'm one of the few people left in this world that doesn't think Mega Man X6 is that bad. But that's a discussion for another day. Licensed games usually came to me in the form of
Rugrats.
platformers.
Yes, I
Rugrats is
played
one of my
that.
favorite cartoons on Nickelodeon, especially before the animation bump. And I
And
was
the
pretty stoked to
Rugrats
see a video
golf
game
game
tie-in.
is
You control the
crazy.
babies and play a bunch of minigames to collect pieces of Tommy's
Yep.
Reptar puzzle. The games are all based on
Yeah,
episodes
yeah,
of the
here we
series,
go.
like
This
playing
is the
miniature
game I
golf on Ice
remember.
Cream Mountain,
Rugrats
clobbering the likes
Golf.
of Mr. Fiend, and avoiding the likes of Thor.
I
Gusto
love
once
this
eat.
game so much.
There's no reason to go back and play it nowadays, but back when I was 11, it was good enough for me.
Yeah, I love
One licensed game I remembered very fondly was that
Toy
of Toy Story
Story,
2.
yeah.
It was a Christmas gift from my brother Elliot, but seeing that he was
I
only
hardly
3 years old
played
at the time
this.
it came out, I'm sure he didn't realize how much time I kept the game away from him. You control Buzz Lightyear through many levels
was
based on
too
the
busy playing
locations the
Duke
toys go
Nukem.
through in the movie, and progressing further requires you to collect Pizza Planet tokens. The game is your standard 3D collectathon that Super Mario 64 helped make enormously popular, but this is a case where that's not a bad thing at all. I think the controls are smooth, shooting enemies with Buzz's laser feels great, and the level design is pretty good. And watching cutscenes straight from the movie was always a plus in my books. When it wasn't a licensed game though, it was something like Gex, Enter the Gecko. I don't recall how I was introduced to Gex, but it was something I specifically requested for a Christmas gift in 1998. I didn't get to play the likes of Super Mario 64 until the early 2000s, but Gex 2 did a damn fine job filling the gap. You control
played
Gex
it, I
throughout the
can't
media
remember.
dimension and collect remotes to unlock new areas in the hub worlds. There are loads of things to collect and plenty of secrets in each level. The story is very tongue-in-cheek, knowing damn well that it's a video game and contains a lot of pop culture references that unfortunately kind of date the game.
Hi, I'm here for the real world interview.
Gex himself can be pretty humorous at times with his random but tangential quips, but at my age I really wish there was a mute button to get him to shut up. I get it, it's tail time.
Tail time!
Nevertheless, this is a game I spent countless nights on. I definitely recommend giving this a shot if you have a PS3. It was finally given a release on the PSN store just a few weeks ago. One of the games I planned on showing off for this video was Croc, Legend of the Gobos, but I had the
think I've
displeasure
seen
of
it.
discovering that my copy doesn't work anymore. That doesn't
that
surprise me
sucks.
too much, seeing that I've had this CD for well over 15 years, but
Yeah, that does it.
rest in peace, my friend.
Yeah.
Perhaps your time will come later. At the tail end of my PS1 phase, I started playing games without really thinking about what I just purchased. This led me to Oddworld, Abe's
Oddworld,
Odyssey, a game I
yes,
probably
I've
spent a
played the
grand
shit
total
out
of
of this
2
as
hours on
well.
before regretting the purchase. At the risk of
I
further
enjoyed this
infuriating Oddworld fans
I never
out there,
understood how-
I just didn't think it was that interesting. I didn't like the controls,
I
and
was
while I understand that the
frustrated
game
with
setting
this
was
game.
supposed to invoke a sinister vibe considering the subject matter, it put me to sleep. You need to have a specific taste to enjoy this one, so I guess I don't have the taste buds for this sort of thing. Then there's Rascal, one of my biggest regrets
Rascal.
ever on the PS1.
Never heard of it.
If you want a textbook example of how
I
not to
think
do
I
a
have.
3D
I can't
platform game
remember.
that isn't Bubsy 3D, you look at this game. Bleak environments, incredibly ugly graphics, the most horrendous camera you can possibly have in a game like
No,
this,
I don't think
and
I have
horrible
seen
controls
this.
that put Superman 64 to shame.
Oh,
May I
Superman
remind the audience
64.
that this game was released in 1998, and we already had much better games in years prior. In fact,
Yeah.
Gex Enter the Gecko came out the same fucking year. I'm gonna go back to that game.
I'm flaming! In the manly way.
So many
manly
memories.
way.
The late 90s was a great time to be a video gamer, and I've been a loyal fan of Sony since then. Throughout the 2000s, they would continue to give me a bunch of fantastic titles on the
2,
PlayStation
Resident
2,
Evil 4,
and while the
look at those
PlayStation
beautiful
3
games.
didn't have the best start when it came out, it later became one of my favorite systems of the past generation. The release of the PlayStation 4 really shows me just how far the brand has come along.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
back then, it was all about the games, and occasionally using the system as a makeshift CD player. Now the PlayStation can play movies or stream video content.
Yeah,
It can be an internet
apps.
browser, and you
Yay.
can communicate with your friends via messaging and social media. Hell, you don't even need physical discs anymore. You can download the games off an online store and play it that way. Technology
If you got the
truly
hard
is a
drive
marvelous
for
thing,
it.
ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to see it move on. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Isn't there one franchise in particular that I've been blatantly ignoring this entire
Resident
video?
Evil?
Despite it being well known that I played the ever-living hell out of these games back in the PS1 days.
Come on, say Resident
Well,
Evil,
yeah,
please.
but I have good reason for doing so. If you think I'm just going to skim through my experiences with this certain marsupial, you got another thing coming.
Please say
With
Resident
that said,
Evil.
it's time for another marathon, ladies and gentlemen. So when we next meet up, we're looking at the franchise of games that I spent so many hours on
Resident
that
Evil.
wasn't a Final Fantasy game. I'll see you guys then.
Please say Resident Evil. What is it? Or Silent Hill. Silent Hill was amazing. And every Crash game released on the PS1. Oh, Crash. Bandicoot Crash. I didn't play that very much. That was Johnny versus the PlayStation. I played a lot of games like he did, Metal Gear Solid, just tons of games. I must have played like 50 games for the PlayStation 1. I mean, I didn't really play a lot of sports games. I'm not really a sports person. I didn't really have all that FIFA crap on the PlayStation or golf or whatever it was. So it's a very bizarre thing because I'm sure everyone had those wonderful, bizarre sports games. But for me, I hated those sports games. I traded them in for something a little bit more, a little bit better. That was Johnny versus the PlayStation. That was totally cool. If you like this video, make sure to give a like, comment down below, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.